Hello and welcome to the Passion Driven Pioneers interview series. I'm your host, John Channon, and today I'm joined by Dave Neville, who is the president and co-founder of Infinity Robotics. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today.
John, thanks for having me on. As you mentioned, I'm co-founder with Infinity Robotics. I started out my career with Sears Roebuck Company. Also worked for about 10 years at UPS. I started probably my first company at 13 years old, cleaning construction sites for a local contractor. Um, Probably about when I got out of high school, decided I wanted to be a DJ, so I started a mobile DJ business. Did that while I was going to college, working at UPS and Sears simultaneously. Decided I had children at that point and I needed to get more of a day job. So I went into headhunting for electrical engineers. And after about 20 years of that, decided I wanted to go back into robotics. I started one of the first robotics clubs in 1985 at Burnsville High School. We didn't realize robot clubs were a thing at that point. In fact, I found out I was the state robot champion 3 years in a row after I graduated. They did notify me on the third year that I had been winning every year. And I went and saw the event because I assumed I must be the only person who had a robot. And yeah, I was the only robot there. So started early looking at robotics, and then eventually went to work for a company called Par Systems up in Shoreview. After a little bit of time there, decided to leave and form my own company. I'm also the founder of Minnesota Innovates, which is an organization that works with entrepreneurs in the state. We host on April 11th. We'll be at the Minneapolis Club for the 13th annual Entrepreneur Kickoff. It's where we bring together probably 30 different entrepreneurial organizations and entrepreneurs into one space for networking and training and kind of meeting up as to what do you need to know to start your company. With that, we recently, my ultimate goal with robots is to send robots into outer space and mine outer space and build factories. We surprisingly found out about a year ago that Minnesota is the very last place in the US we can launch heavy rockets to the moon, Mars, or asteroid belt. So Minnesota will probably be the world's largest spaceport in the next 10 years if the state gets behind this. So I get to see some really interesting things and really excited to be here today with you.
Well, thank you for that introduction. That was great. And if people were interested in signing up on this for this entrepreneurial thing that you guys are doing in April, how would they go about doing that?
You can go to mn-entrepreneur-kick-off.eventbrite.com. So if you look for Minnesota Entrepreneur Kickoff on eventbrite.com, you can get tickets. This will be held at Club E in conjunction with Rick Brimacombe's Club E at the Minneapolis Club. So while we're hosting our event, the Minneapolis Club will be hosting the normal Club E event. So it's a great opportunity to not only see investors and entrepreneurs in one room. So great event really to get connected. If you're thinking about starting a company, it's just a great area to make some connections, get some friends, and see if you really want to quit your day job.
Well, that's great. That's an awesome thing that you guys offer. So I appreciate that a lot. So let's go back to Infinity Robotics.
Yes.
What was that initial spark that led you to take that entrepreneurial leap with this business?
Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I think as a result, I might be unemployable. So often starting my own business is a better option than maybe working for someone else, as I've found. Primarily, I started in robots in high school, building mobile robots and arms. As I got out of that, and I was a headhunter for about 15, 20 years doing embedded hardware, software engineers, primarily for military medical applications. So I saw a lot of really cool vision technology that my guys would develop for various defense contractors. And I got to thinking some of that stuff might be really cool on robots. So in the meantime, while I was doing this headhunting, I decided I wanted to start a machine gun factory. So I started a company called Kuhn & Inc. And I made 357 Magnum automatic pistols in a 1911 style for your gun aficionados. They're going, oh my God, that doesn't exist, but it did. I supplied a lot of the AK-47 receivers in the US and FNFAL receivers. So if you're a dark ops video game player, it's probably your favorite rifle. I started that company so that I could machine my own drives for robots and get the licenses I needed to build rockets to send my robots into outer space. It was not a good plan, it was just a plan. So I kind of had this passion and vision for robots on and off. And when I kind of left the headhunting and shut down my gun factory, I thought, well, what's cooler than guns? Yeah, nothing. Robots were a real distant second, and I decided, you know what? I've always had a passion for this. I've been working with a lot of technology around it. Can we assimilate some of this into better robotic systems to aid humanity? And that led me over to Par Systems. And from Par Systems, decided when I left there, a couple engineers and managers kind of called me up and said, "Hey, Dave, we really think you should start your own robot company. We'd like to help you get started." And so a small group of us got together and we formed Infinity Robotics.
So you mentioned you're a bit of a serial entrepreneur, started up your own business at age 13. A lot of times there's some misconceptions about starting up your own business, or about running a business. Can you share some of those with us that you've heard?
Well, it's impossible. They're right. I think the biggest thing is helping entrepreneurs over the years start their own business. My own is whatever you do, make sure you do not write a business plan to start. I think I see about 80% of small businesses never start because they started writing a business plan. And unfortunately, in those heady, exciting days, that business plan is a roadmap to failure because all as you can see is all the roadblocks in your way. Versus I've got a good friend that I'll confide in when I'm looking at starting a new business, and I go to him because I do know what his advice is. Dave, everything you've ever done is impossible, but everything you've ever done happens because you just started it and kind of figured it out from there. I kind of think 3 months in is a good time to write your business plan. But your bank might want that at that point. But for the most part, if you're going to write a business plan, it should be a business outline that's a living document. I laughed because I opened up my safe one day and I noticed there was a stack of credit cards in the safe. And I asked my wife, "Why are we storing credit cards in the safe?" She goes, "Well, that's in case you decide to start another business." Um, so, it is amazing what you can do on $20,000, $40,000 worth of credit cards to start your own business. Obviously hitting that friends and family round might be your second move. Um, so there's going to be a lot of obstacles, and you really got to decide, are you ready to take that kind of risk? And are you ready for a lot of long days? Now, the really good news is I work a lot of really long days. Can't wait to get home to go to bed, and I can't wait to get up in the morning and get back to work. So try and pick something you're passionate about. I've ruined most of my hobbies through starting a business. I enjoyed music, so I started being a DJ service. I enjoyed firearms, so I opened up a firearms manufacturing company, and I enjoyed robots, and I opened up a robot company. I don't want to say it destroyed those hobbies, but they're no longer hobbies. They're now a working passion, which is a little bit different than a hobby that you get to play with and enjoy. Maybe you drop a few $1,000s a year on your hobby versus investing your entire life savings. That's the fine line. A couple thousand, your entire life. So I would say if you're passionate about it, if you think you understand the market, go for it. My MO more often than it's not, as I've started businesses, even with my staffing business that I started and ran for about 15 to 20 years there, I went and worked for someone else. I kind of spent 6 months to a year or two with them, seeing how they did it. I wasn't sneaky. I told them, I think I'd like to go into this as a business. When I started my DJ business, another DJ company invited me out, let me work with them for a couple months to realize, see if I enjoyed it. When I started my staffing company, it was around the 2001, right after 9/11. And I'd worked for a year or two at this firm. I enjoyed what I was doing, working with these scientists and engineers. And after 9/11, their business declined a little bit. And I found it was a good opportunity to go out and start my own. So I recommend get to know the field, find something you enjoy, go put in a little sweat equity with somebody for a year or two. You'd be shocked at how much effort and help they'll give you in starting your own business. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that spend a year or two writing that business plan. And I'm like, why don't you just spend a year or two going to work for somebody and see if this is really an environment you enjoy? So that's probably my best piece of advice is if you can, even 6 months with someone, enough to analyze that market, see what the skills you have to bring, and then more importantly, what kind of team do you need to build around you? I think most people think they have to go into business and know everything about business, legal, accounting. No, no, no. You contract some of that out, you beg and borrow for some friends. If you need legal advice, lawyers are great at some pro bono. They're happy to give you a few hours of advice, hoping that you'll be a customer down the road. And they tend to have that mantra. Same thing with an accountant. They'll give you a couple hours of advice. Show up at things like the Entrepreneur Kickoff, Club E, go network a little bit with people who are in that entrepreneurial spirit. Very often I'm talking to people who are very accomplished engineers. They make a lot of money. I'm like, before you go quit that $250,000 a year job, do you really want to sweat out every 80 grand you make moving forward? And so I think you have to kind of figure out where your lifestyle is and what your resources you're willing to kind of risk to do that.
Yeah, that's really good. What I heard you say is, you need to do some research, but you also need to actually get out there and make it happen and pull that trigger. You can't research forever.
No,
That's great.
get off the pot or get going or go find your next idea. Because here's the deal. If you start your idea and it fails, the faster that fails, the faster you're on to your next option. Not the best way to always do it, but it's not the end. You've got to figure out where you fit in that ecosystem.
So Dave, I got to ask it. What's that hobby that you haven't turned into a business yet?
Subatomic particle physics.
Subatomic particle physics.
That's my one hobby that I think a lot of, particularly palladium drives for ion drive systems for spacecraft. How do I get my barges to and from the asteroid belt? How do we change the state of atoms to use those energy changes to benefit us in these different, it's kind of an analog for different technologies we might develop in the future. Particularly how we might make some quantum gates for quantum computing if that ever actually becomes a thing. So I enjoy thinking about that, and I have not ruined that hobby just yet.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you entertaining that question and sharing that with me. So let's talk a little bit about how you stay adaptable and open to change with Infinity Robotics.
Well, I have to be honest, it comes back to that team. I'm kind of a salesperson, visionary who couldn't do the math to express myself in Greek, but I see the math, if you will. So I have some really good engineers around me. I have some sales people around me that help me. I don't lead any of my companies. I always try and find somebody else to be CEO. I'm a leader, but I'm not the guy who should be leading the operations day to day. So know your limitations, know what you enjoy doing, know what you don't enjoy, and don't be afraid to ask people around you to fill those holes in. And I've been very grateful over the years that I've had, some friends or some coworkers that, filled in that gap on what I don't feel like I'm the best at, and more importantly, what I don't want to do. I don't want to run day-to-day operations. I want to go out and talk to customers. I want to figure out what their problems are, and I want to come back and try and help the engineering team create that solution. My value a lot of times in those circles is hearing what wasn't said in the room. What was the nonverbal? What was the verbal? What was the written? But more importantly, what are they really trying to accomplish at the end of the day? Because they often can't articulate that themselves the way they wish they could.
Yeah, that's really cool. Early on, you talked about, I think, a spaceport, I think was the term that you used. Can you
Correct.
maybe just offer us a little bit of a glimpse into your future plans and goals that you have for Infinity Robotics?
So if you come to our office in Savage, Minnesota, you're going to notice one thing when you walk in, a big letters on the wall, change the way we live on and off this planet. And our ultimate goal is to enable the human experience through automation to achieve a better life. For those people doing super dangerous jobs, let me put a robot in there. Ideally, we want to create a bit of a life raft where we can colonize outer space, manufacture and mine in outer space. I think that's the next step for the evolution of mankind in our society. Um, so ideally, what I'm trying to do is combine various artificial intelligence products into more cohesive solutions. So interestingly enough, Minnesota is one of the major hubs for robot AI in the world. Most of the new AI robot products that hit the market come to my lab in Savage, and we kind of vet that out and we introduce them to our competitors, all our distributors, and more importantly, our manufacturers like Fanuc and Kawasaki Robotics. So we'll help them adapt some of the AI tools that they weren't aware. So Savage, Minnesota itself sees the robot AI about 6 to 18 months before the market's aware it even exists.
Oh, man, that's a nice,
Not a lot of people know that about Minnesota, that we are really leading that charge. We're a significant player is probably the best way to put it.
that's really great. So, knowing that this podcast is really focused on people who are in the process of either starting up their own businesses or in the first couple of years, what words of advice do you have for our listeners?
Get a good accountant. Don't be afraid to spend some money on legal up front. Don't be afraid by that price. A lot of times they'll tell you 10 to 20,000 for your legal. And when you're starting up, that is a choke number for a lot of us. Talk to that lawyer. They're usually okay. Just give them $1,000 a month for the next 12 months to put that together for you. They get it. They want to build you into a good customer. Try and pull together as many resources as you can, whether it's friends and family that can help assist some of your process, might be able to advise you. And don't be afraid to reach out to your competitors to get their advice, because you could be a resource they could use while you're growing. They could feed you business they can't take on. And maybe instead of competitors, you're more friends after a year or two. Keep your books clean, pay your taxes, because at about year 2, the government will work to fund your business. The SBA, while they can be a little brutal if you don't pay them, they are wonderful on getting you capital at that 2-year mark. So spend your first year or two building those couple key customers, getting some revenue, and demonstrating that you can start to expand your business. Also, appreciate the scope you're going to be. If you really only want to be a one-man show, one-woman show, do that. If it's going to be you and a few colleagues, build your business for that. If you want to be a major conglomerate and shooting for the stars, shoot for the stars, but be happy where you land.
Listen, I appreciate that, because we refer to that, what you just talked about, as, surrounding yourself with people who care about you, and we call it a mastermind group. Resources that have expertise that you need, but you might not necessarily have yourself.
Exactly. And so we talk, a lot of people worry about putting their board of directors together. That's not as important as putting a board of advisors together, which is kind of that group you just alluded to. Having those casual advisors that don't mind giving you a half hour on the phone because they like you. And to be honest, you're not taking from them, you're building their network as well, because they're getting to think about things differently. And being personable and genuine can get you a lot further down the road than a bigger checkbook will.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dave. It was great
Thank you.
meeting you and learning more about your entrepreneurial journey. And to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.